So, good evening, you guys. I want to review AEW Revolution 2025, and I also want to mention that I've gone to every AEW pay per view from September 2023, the show where CM Punk left, all the way until World's End. And actually, World's End was so bad, in my opinion. I said to myself that I'm going to sit this one out. I'm actually going to spend a couple of days in Tennessee. And I would overall say that I do mostly regret not going to the Los Angeles show. I wish I was there because definitely when you're in the crowd, it's like being part of a big party. But I would say that the show was a C plus for me. There's definitely things that AEW does with their pay per views and their shows, bad habits that they really really need to break. And some of the bad habits are having 13 matches on a card. You should have at least 10. The next thing is that honestly, I think the booking was a little bad. You had your false count anywhere match, and then you had a match, and then you had a steel cage match. And I actually fell asleep during the steel cage match because I was just so tired from the whole show really. So that's why you can't have so many matches. And the main event is just another evidence of that they're pushing the wrong people, and ultimately I think that they want to continue things that are not working, like the Moxley thing. That's not working. The fact that he had Wheeler Yuta in a really big spot during the main event, when a lot of people say he's really a wrestler that could do well on Ring of Honor television. And also just the main event, which was really really bad, and the ending of it was really bad. With that said too, the show had a lot of ups and downs really, but I think a C plus is a fair rating. So I want to talk about the main event first. That first of all, I do not like Adam Copeland and how he's been wrestling in AEW. Like, he's more of a brawler type of wrestler. But the match he had with Wheeler Yuta on television, he kind of came off he's trying to do a little bit more flips. He was trying to be a little bit more like an indie type of wrestler, really. So that doesn't really work for him. And even this match, I felt like it was weird. It looked like John Moxley was limping to the ring. And then it also looked like with Adam Copeland, he came off as very sluggish. He came off as moving a little too slow. And there was really no spots in that thing that looked very appealing to me. It just was it really felt like age is catching up to them, or just back to back matches, or having a couple of matches of the week. You kind of felt like you're watching two old guys that really just their battles are catching up to them. So it felt really really poor. And then the other thing too is you had Wheeler Yuta betray Adam Copeland, and then it's why are you making Wheeler Yuta a big deal? There's no appeal to Wheeler Yuta. He actually just, really, really kills the crowd, really, and so it just doesn't really do anything. It's just very, very pointless to have him. He's never going to be a star. What you're doing with him is not really working. He's not the right person. Imagine if you had Ricky Starks in his spot. Imagine how much that would bang, really. Imagine how much that would really bang. But Wheeler Yuta is not a star. Stop featuring him in big moments. That's not working. And then also, too, I appreciate Jay White and Adam Copeland. They need to be a tag team. Jay White has gotten better, but for a long time, he's kind of been somebody who, in my opinion, doesn't talk that much in the microphone, not featured that well, really. So you see, Jay White and Yuta in the main event spot, it's just not. It has no appeal to anybody, really. And then the other thing that is a little weird is you keep cutting away to Samoa Joe, Katsuyori Shibata, and Hook. So it's almost what I think. I understand what they were trying to do. I think what they're trying to do is say that they're trying to put some doubts in people's head that Christian was going to cash in tonight. Because, obviously they're not going to obviously, you see what Hook does, so yeah, it just, I got why they did that, but that made no sense, really. It was just, jarring. It felt like a Family Guy cutaway where it's irrelevant. And then also, too, Christian's cashing in was done very, very poorly. And I understand why they did that. The reason why they did that was because they had no plan with his AEW World Heavyweight Championship Anytime Anywhere contract. And their execution was very poor. I would have actually rather have seen him just say, you know what, I'm just I'm just sick of waiting around, and I'm just going to cash it in on a television show after Moxley gets a beat down. That would be the way to kind of do that. But what they did was very fucking stupid. Because, first of all, Christian always uses Chris Sabian, Luchasaurus, Nick Wayne. So, wouldn't it make sense for those people to be down with him? So, you broke logic with that. Number two is Christian is a very calculated person. So, you made him look stupid. You made him look out of character. And then the other thing about it is that it took one submission hold to take him out, really. He's a wrestler that's had, 2 out of 3 falls match with Darby Allin. He's had matches where he's gone a long time, really. But really, he just felt like, he really felt like he couldn't hang really anymore. He felt like Goldust in WWE, not Dustin Rhodes, but he felt like Goldust in WWE. Like, he felt like, an easy victory, really. So that was done very, very poorly, and it came off like a fart in church. I understand, like, as I said, they were trying to wrap some things up. They were trying to get the contract off of Christian, and they were trying to extend Moxley as a champion. And like I've said, that the match they need to have for Dynasty is Swerve Strickland versus Jon Moxley. That is a banger of a match. They'll take things very, very far, and it's ultimately the right match to have, really, because really the company went downhill when they made Bryan Danielson the champion, and then Bryan Danielson lost to Moxley, really. So that could be a talking point about like how Swerve was like, I've seen what you've done to this company, and you need to pay the price, really. And then also it kind of gives you a, optimism or a thought in your head, really, about, hey, is Swerve going to actually be the one to take the title off of Moxley? Do they really feel that it's the right decision for AEW to take the title off of Moxley, really? So it was good that Moxley won, but how he won was done poorly. I would rather see him and Adam Copeland have a match with no interference. Whatever happens, happens, and that's the end of it. And I think that would have been appropriate. Or you have like a midway point, then you include Christian, and then he loses anyway, But they just, they did it very poorly, and I understand that they're a little strapped for time, really, but the execution was done very poorly. And I'm also going to talk about the Will Ospreay match and Kyle Fletcher before I go from top to bottom of the card. That unfortunately I fell asleep during this match, because what happened was that you had so many matches on the card that I just got really, really tired, really. And it was a match I was looking forward to seeing. But when you have 13 matches on a card, that's way too much. The other thing, too, is that a lot of the matches have the same formula. And this is kind of the issue with AEW. It's usually 2 wrestlers fighting, hitting each other with finishers, hitting each other with moves that can normally knock a person out, but they keep getting 2 falls, and they keep extending it. When you do that, the problem is, it's like what they say, it's a David Meltzer match, because people think that that's epic and good that these wrestlers are going on for a long time. But the problem is, if you do that too much, really, it loses its power, and it actually makes it unrealistic. But then the other part of it is it makes it kind of cartoony. There's a reason why you have that type of match in WWE during a main event of a pay-per-view, or during like a WrestleMania or something like that. You don't just have every like pay-per-view match be like that. You have to have squash matches. You have to have things go a little bit shorter, really. And sometimes, I think that, like I've said, you should make a 15-match card and be like, okay, well, maybe not 6 of those matches should be, what we're going to have for main events of Dynamite and Collision, really. But, they've just used way too much. They had way too much matches. It knocked me out. There was a spot where, Kyle Fletcher's licking Will Ospreay's blood off the fence mesh, and that needs to stop. You've done that so many times, it loses its impact. It loses its impact to do that. And then the other thing that I will say is that they did a Spanish fly off the top of the cage. That's a really cool spot, but I'm not sure if Will Ospreay really was injured, but they really have to say to themselves, okay, we have to see how far we can take this stuff, because if we're going to injure our top guy, you did that with Adam Copeland like last year in Vegas. There's automatically has to be something where they have to be use a lot more common sense, really, or be like, okay, even though these spots are good, really, they're really injuring our people. We have to think about how we do things. So I'm going to review the rest of the card. So I want to talk about the pre-show a little bit. So I want to say that Ash Avidson, the director of the Queen of the Ring, I like what he was saying, that, wrestlers are very passionate. AEW is about fighting and swinging and never giving up. Like, he was saying some more stuff, but he really came off as very passionate. I honestly said to myself that if Hollywood doesn't work out for him, he should be like an announcer or general manager of AEW, because he has a lot of passion in that. I was happy that Chris Jericho caused a no match or no contest with Gravity. But I was mad about what happened, really, because I was saying to myself, imagine if you put Powerhouse Hobbs here, and then Powerhouse Hobbs was like, I'm going to challenge you at Super Card of Honor, or, I'm coming after your ROH title, and you have it at Dynasty if you're not going to do Super Card of Honor. But they should have really set that up here. That would have been good. The next thing that I want to say is that I was a little mad that they included Powerhouse Hobbs and Harley Cameron in the Big Boom AJ match and all that, really, because the first thing is that Harley Cameron, I'll give you an exception because she's a funny and bubbly wrestler, but the problem is that I think building her towards a title, giving her a match on the card, showing that she's graduated from a Collision wrestler, she needs to be on Dynamite and have some pay-per-view match, that's a better fitting for her. But their problem is that she's a little bit of her own worst enemy, because she's kind of bubbly and fun, and she doesn't really have a good direction, really. So she's probably bound to be one of those wrestlers that could be somebody great, but doesn't know when to not take herself too comedic. She needs to know when to take herself seriously, build to a goal, build to a direction, because, if you don't do anything with her by Dynasty, she's just going to lose that luster, and then she's just going to be, future endeavored, and that be that, really. Maybe WWE will fix her, but yeah, she really needs to think about, who she wants to be. Does she want to be a Santino Marella, or does she actually want to be, going towards the title and having some bits of comedy in her stuff, and actually be like that underdog type of wrestler? That's where she needs to be. And then the other problem is you have Powerhouse Hobbs in that. It makes no sense. You're trying to make Hobbs look like a friend of Big Boom AJ and, his kids and all that, and that's not good, because a better spot for Hobbs would be to go up against Chris Jericho. He's a vicious wrestler, a tough wrestler, a badass type of wrestler. So this is not the right spot for him. You need to set up Chris Jericho versus Hobbs. And if you want to make Ring of Honor really stand out, you have that match headline at Ring of Honor pay-per-view. But this was the wrong position for Hobbs. So the show opened up with Hangman versus MJF. They start with a very brawling style. I like how they mention on the announcers that these guys are the future of pro wrestling. They're both former champions, and they're letting their feelings out. MJF is a great wrestler. He knows what type of match to do. With Ospreay, he was more of like a high flyer. In this match, he was more of just like a gritty, gritty, just brawler, just unapologetic type of wrestler, hitting very violent moves. And they both understand that that's the story that works for both of them, and this is the right match. This was probably like the best match on the card, in my opinion, because the characters really understood their role with this. MJF does an eye gouge. And I also appreciate the camera doing great wide shots of the crowd, really, because you got to show, you got to when you have a full arena, because everybody says AEW struggling, show the whole arena, show all the people there, because then it says, hey, you know what, we can pack, and 11,000 is a good draw, even if they're not selling out the Kia Forma, whatever. 11,000 is a great draw for a wrestling show. MJF does a power bomb on Hangman. MJF picks up Hangman, execute a power bomb, drops Hangman on MJF's his own knee. Really, that looked really brutal. Adam Page does a moonsault on MJF on the ringside area. MJF does a guillotine submission into a DDT. Adam Page does a dead eye buckshot lariat. MJF does a Fujiwara armbar and a Kuji Katami. MJF, I'm not really a fan of this anymore. The MJF kind of he got on the microphone, he got on the announcer thing, he got on the announcer and he said to the audience, I'm the fucking man. You've done that so many times, really. It just becomes like the Conway Twitty gag. You saying the word fuck and everybody's saying the word fuck in AEW. That doesn't have any fucking appeal. You're always fucking doing it. It becomes like a fucking episode of The fucking Sopranos. So saying fuck over and over again doesn't have any fucking appeal. So fucking try something fucking different. Fucking understand my fucking emphasis. Saying fuck over and over, and a few other people saying the word fuck a bunch of times. It may be appropriate for the right fucking moment and those fucking moments, but you keep saying the word fuck way too many fucking times, it loses its fucking appeal and it doesn't become fucking new. It becomes fucking repetitive, and there's a lot of fucking repetitiveness on the show. MJF reverses the pile driver on, and Adam Page gets pile drivered onto a chair. That was very vicious. I also really appreciate that there was not a lot of violating the 10 count rule, and I really appreciate that they did a spot where Adam Page is close to a 10 count, and I was really proud of that they were not trying to they were really not trying to be outside the ring more than 10 seconds. I appreciate that. And even though they did pile driver spots on the tables, onto chairs and whatever outside the ring, it's not enough for me to say, okay, this is a hardcore match in a regular type of match, a hardcore match without a hardcore stipulation. So I'm okay with that. MJF has a mental breakdown because he wants to be beloved. So I appreciate him establishing a weakness, but that felt out of place. I think that MJF is a good character, but there are certain times we have to understand that he throws in something and it kind of hams up the moment, or it may be better in a different context. Maybe if he acted like that in the middle of the ring during, the follow-up to this, that would be more appropriate, but here it doesn't work. Adam Copeland does a Deadeye, Angel Wings, and I was very surprised that Adam Copeland won. Adam Page won. I'm sorry, Adam Hangman won. I'm very proud Hangman won, really, because in my opinion, he was the right winner of this, because you can do another match where they fight and it's all bloody and crazy and all that, but the problem is that you don't want to do too many repeat matches, because this show had a lot of repeat matches, and that's kind of been a trend with AEW, really, having a lot of repeat matches. I didn't know who the winner was going to be. I really thought it was going to be MJF. Adam Page won. I appreciate the unpredictability. The next match was Mercedes Moné versus Momo Watanabe. In my opinion, this was like the second weakest match of the card. The weakest match was the main event. They do a bunch of shoving. Moné dances too much. Momo and Moné exchange pile driver reversals, and then Moné power bombs her onto the ringside floor. The crowd gets very silent, and it kind of felt like this match was kind of like a little dead or flat to them. Momo does a Meteora from the top rope to the ring apron. There's a decent back and forth, but this is one of these matches that, if this was Vince McMahon or WWE, they would say, hey, you know what, we gave you 20 minutes for this match, wrap it up in 8 minutes, because, the crowd is a little dead. And that's how I kind of felt with this. And this is why I say this, stop having Joshi wrestlers in AEW. Most people don't know who Momo Watanabe is, or Emi Sakura, or anybody else, really. You have to establish these people. If you had Asuka, who is a Joshi wrestler, that would be a great match. So with Kairi Sane and other ones, Momo Watanabe, you're throwing somebody from New Japan. This is basically a match that would do well in Stardom or New Japan Pro Wrestling. So imagine this was Harley Cameron. Imagine if this was, Saraya or another like babyface type of wrestler, or even if it was like Julia Hart from the House of Black, because she's been on a winning streak, or Billy Starks. There's a lot that they could do. There's a lot of things that they could do. I appreciate them featuring Billy Starks at the ending, saying, hey, there's going to be a future match between her and Mercedes Moné, really. But it really just felt that it really was a waste of a match, really. It was really a waste of a match. this match should have happened in Japan, really, in front of a Japanese audience. That would have gotten over, really. But here, people were just really dead not interested because you did nothing with Momo Watanabe and her character getting over in a big way, really. They tried, but it failed. The next match was Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet. This is possibly maybe the best match on the card. One of the few best matches on the card. They both had they started with a very agile X Division high flyer, flippy type of style. Ricochet does a shoulder tackle, does a shoulder rib breaker, which looked very vicious. No, Swerve does a shoulder rib breaker on Ricochet that looked very violent and vicious. Swerve accidentally pushes Nana. Ricochet does a house call, top rope crossbody. Prince Nana's mom is in the crowd. And I felt like through this match, I was a little annoyed that they were featuring, Nana's mom a lot. And I was also kind of annoyed they're featuring the Robe a lot because I felt like it got to a point where the whole Nana distraction thing and focus on Nana was just, it took away from the match. But I understand that what they're trying to do is make you feel uncertain. Is Nana going to join Ricochet? Is he going to cost Swerve the match by fault or by accident, really? So I understand what they were doing to create unpredictability, but they over-featured Nana and the Robe and everything like that, really, to a point where it felt like it took away from the match. Swerve does a backbreaker and a drop kick and a brainbuster. Ricochet does a running, spinning lariat, springboard Hurricane Rana, which looked very, very vicious. Ricochet, and I was also saying too, this is where we kind of run into this big issue. Ricochet was getting a bunch of two falls, and that happens in a lot of matches, really. And I was saying to myself, okay, with Ricochet and Swerve, yes, I can be cool with that. But not every match needs to be a bunch of two falls because then it makes the finishers look weak and stuff like that. I actually felt at this point, I was like saying, man, Ricochet's kicking out a lot of stuff, really. This could be an upset win. I felt very unpredictable. I was at the edge of my seat because I knew Swerve should win, but AEW doesn't always make the best choices, really. They could have had Swerve win this. They could have had Ricochet win this, and that would have been a bad decision. So I was happy that I felt like a sense of unease and unpredictability because that's hard to do with AEW. Ricochet hits a Hurricane Rana on the ringside apron. Swerve does a vertebreaker on an announce table. Top rope double stomp. Ricochet does a 360 senton from the top rope. Swerve does a second rope dive, and Ricochet counters that into a Death Valley driver. I did not like when Ricochet was wearing the robe because it felt like, as I'll say, very 48-hour film project. It looked silly, it looked dopey, it looked goofy. He should not have done that, really. It hurt the match, really, because, he wants to be taken seriously. I don't think you look serious when you are taking somebody's long robe and you're doing your finisher in it. I understand he's trying to make heel heat, but it's one of those things, too, where they should talk out these ideas. They should say, hey, I should do this for the finisher. Maybe that looks a little too goofy. We need to just nix it. Or maybe he should just do something like, like step on the robe or journey the robe and then just do his finisher, or lay the robe on top of Swerve and then do a 4-3, 630 or something like that. Or do a double foot stomp since he's landing his feet on top of the robe. That would be a little bit more better than just wearing a robe and all that stuff. There could have been better choreography with that. And also, too, like, I felt the ending was heartfelt. Like, Nana and Swerve get back on the same page. That was really cool. So the next match with Okada, and that was one of the best matches of the night, was Swerve versus Ricochet. And then, as I said, Swerve versus Jon Moxley will be a great match at AEW Dynasty as long as they stop with this interference shit. Okada versus Brody King, really great match, but this is where we run into problems. Like, Brody King is a big body wrestler. So the problem is that when he's doing finishers and when he's slamming and he's lifting Okada and he's coming off like a big, formidable force, if Okada's getting two counted or whatever, really, it really hurts Brody King, really. Imagine if Andre the Giant did a splash on somebody. If he's doing it against Hulk Hogan, that would warrant a 2 count, but a majority of people, if he was going up against, like in the intercontinental champions or other people who are a little bit down the roster, that would take them out. That would take them out immediately. I felt like Brody King, he's one of those wrestlers that I feel like, with bad booking or with bad physics, he needs a lot of protection in his booking, really. But I think this was a really great opportunity with him, but to make him a big deal and a big star, really. But I feel like, as I said, that the problem is when he does a lot of these really crazy offenses and all this stuff, really, and Okada's kicking out, really, you're really making him look like, okay, well, he's not that strong of a big man if all of his moves and a bigger body person is not like, knocking somebody down that easily, really. So they really didn't sell him as a strong wrestler through this, through the match. Brody King does a scoop slam, Okada does a DDT on the floor. Okada does a scoop slam to Brody King. Brody King does a top rope suplex. Brody King does a back body drop. Second rope dive, crossbody onto Okada while he's in the chair, senton. Brody King does a Death Valley driver against a turnbuckle and cannonball. Okada does a back body drop on the ring apron. Okada wins. And like I've said, if he's doing like a Death Valley driver and a crossbody and no cannonball to Okada, that should take him out, really, to sell that Brody King's offense legitimate. So that's that, really. The next match was the Outrunners versus the Hurt Syndicate. I don't like the Outrunners because they really need to even change their pants colors, because just like with the Ass Boys, they have a thing where they look too much alike, really. Like I think like Truth Magnum, his skin's a little bit more redder. So the blood flows in his body a lot more. He's a little bit more redder and stuff like that. So that's how that's how I feel about them. And I said, like, right now I felt a little tired, really, because I was like saying, a lot of these matches that I've seen prior feel a little drawn out. But it wasn't really special. I was actually, I felt this should have been like a squash match type of thing, really, to show how dumb the Hurt Syndicate is. And then they have a rematch after you see a bunch of victories with the Outrunners, and then you do that all in, really. But I felt like this short match, it was something that should have been a squash match. The next match was my match of the night, really. It was Toni Storm versus Mariah May, Hollywood Ending. It was very violent. There was very quick pace, a lot of momentum. All spots really worked. They really told a story. They pushed the envelope for violent women's wrestling, and it was a really great match altogether. Mariah May does a DDT to Toni Storm in the stage area. Mariah May kicks Luther against the table, and then the table falls over and Luther lands on a bunch of glass. Toni Storm does a powerbomb off the stage onto the production table. Toni Storm does a DDT off the guardrail. Mariah May does a short pile driver on the steps. Toni Storm is extremely bloodied. Mariah May does a hip attack on a chair while Toni Storm is in the tree of woe position. Toni Storm hits a suplex, suplexes Mariah May on a chair, and she covers her hand with tape and broken champagne glass, and she cuts Mariah May with that, and Toni Storm pours champagne glass in the middle of the ring. Toni Storm shanks Mariah May with the glass. Mariah May shatters the champagne bottle between Toni Storm, in her in her crotch vagina area. Mariah May hits a head scissors on Toni Storm on glass, and then hits the Mayday finisher. Toni Storm is very bloody. She honestly looks like something out of Sweeney Todd or a bloody adult Tim Burton movie. Toni Storm hits the Storm Zero. Toni Storm whips her with a belt like a government mule. Mariah May hits a Death Valley driver on the stage area. Toni Storm hits the shoe and puts Mariah May through the table on top of the stage with a pile driver. It did feel it felt a little too choreographed, because it felt like they were walking towards the table too much. It felt like, you knew where it's going to go, really, but I felt like, overall it was a really great match. It was really exciting. It was really reinvigorating. It felt like a match that warranted wrestlers kicking out, warranted wrestlers having a bit more endurance because they didn't like each other. The next match was Takeshita versus Omega. And this was a match that I did not like because I felt like, once again, these matches went way too long, really. And the problem is that when you have Kenny Omega or Will Ospreay, you're going to have Tony Khan be like, okay, I'm going to make this a Dave Meltzer New Japan match and make this go on way longer than it should. But the problem is, if a majority of these matches are super long, you're going to have people fall asleep, really, because it's almost like, it's almost like watching a movie that's 3 hours or 4 hours long. While there could be a lot of great things in it, it will put people to sleep, really, So I started to fall asleep during this match. And then also, too, it was predictable that Kenny Omega was going to win. And it was also a little stupid what they did, because I think it was Jeff Jarrett in the beginning saying that Kenny Omega is a Grand Slam champion. But the thing is, if you're going to establish what a Grand Slam champion is, you have to mention that after he wins the title. And then the other thing, too, is that it's bad when you mention that, because then it's like saying, hey, he's actually going to win the match, really, if you're going to mention something like that during the pre-show, and we all knew that Kenny Omega was going to win because of how badly they booked Takeshita. They actually made him go through a gauntlet tournament, and the prize is you're going to defend the title against Omega, really. So they really just put Omega on the front burner, Takeshita on the back burner. But overall, it was a really good and competitive match. I really enjoyed it, but even though I felt that it went on way too long. They exchange strikes in the beginning. Takeshita hits a shoulder tackle. Omega does overroach crossbody. Takeshita does a DDT. And then you see Don Callis assault Kenny Omega. That needs to stop. That's so fucking repetitive. They also violate the 10 count rule. So I'm not happy with that, because, have one show where you're not violating the 10 count rule, please. Takeshita hits a brainbuster. Takeshita hits a vertical suplex where Kenny Omega is in millimeters from falling onto the hitting his stomach on the table legs. But then Takeshita picks him up, does the same move, hits him on the table edge. Takeshita hits a Blue Thunder Bomb, and I was saying too that they're doing a lot of They were doing a lot of just kickouts and everything like that. So I felt like, it was... I just really felt that it was come on, guys. This is just way too fucking long. This is why, you need to cut down the matches, or even start the show at 7 instead of 8 p.m. And I'll even say this. I think that anybody who goes there live, or anybody who orders the pay-per-view, do not watch the pre-show, because it's going to tire you out, really. But I remember this was the thing that was taking a bunch of NyQuil. It was too much for me. It tired me out because it went on way too long, but you also knew the end result, really. And then Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher, I mentioned I fell asleep during the majority of the match. It was very bloody. I didn't like the beginning where it looked like Will Ospreay was doing a flip out the cage, but he hurt his leg because he hit the mesh, really. They're trying to sell it okay, he's limited in what he can do, really. But it just didn't translate well. It was very bloody. I also didn't like the spot where they had Mark Davis and the Don Callis family come down, because what happens is that Omega actually wins this, so it makes the Don Callis family look bad. They had 2 losses tonight. They lost the title, and then they proved that in a steel cage match where there's no rules, Omega perseveres, really, So yeah, the Don Callis family got buried tonight. And they really just need to and Don Callis needs to really have a meeting with AEW about all this, really, because, they have to book them strongly. They have to be featured strongly. There needs to be a long-term direction, really. Or, the Don Callis family as a unit should go to WWE or NXT, really, because they're just there to be there, really, They have so much potential as a unit, but they're booked so poorly. They lose when they're supposed to lose, and that's not good for them. So yeah, that's what I've said. The Spanish Fly off the K spot was really good. And then I talked about Copeland versus Moxley. like and as I said, really short. That I felt like there was too much. I didn't like the interference spots. I didn't like Moxley winning by shenanigans or and how they booked Christian was poor. So overall, I would say that it was a 50-50 pay-per-view, but to give it a letter grade, it was a C+. I did not see anything that was like an epilogue or hinting at future matches. You did not feature Powerhouse Hobbs or Holly Cameron in matches or ways to kind of say, hey, here are our new stars for the next year. I've said like Anthony Bowen should face Max Caster here if they were booked strongly. But there are a lot of missed opportunities. And like I said, I think that AEW is getting a lot more attention. It's being attractive. There's a lot more people who want to see the show. But in that mode, they need to work on their weaknesses. There should have been a build to other events, really. And I also feel that the only thing to look forward to is Swerve versus Moxley at Dynasty, unless they're stupid enough to make that a television show match. But overall, the show had a bunch of flaws, but it was good overall. The strengths outweigh the weaknesses.